What's up, 49er faithful? Welcome to another episode here with Sue and Schuh. We are loving it. Still on a working title. I'm your host, Rob Schuh, joined today by my fantastic guest and regular occurrence here with So Real Suneil of So Real Sports. Suneil, how you doing today, man?
Doing fantastic, man. Had a couple days to digest. For bye week for us, a lot's going on, man. I said that there's going to be some drama coming through this week, and it's already starting to bubble up a little bit. So a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about, a lot of drama. I'll be honest. I mean, I had to throw on a little extra Niners gear today because, it has been a tough week so far. It has been painful to have a third loss in a row. It is tough the way in which the 49ers are losing these three games. I won't get into any of the topics that we're going to cover today just yet and spoil any of them. But, man, there is a lot to cover because this is not a situation where you have a bad team losing games in my book. This is a much more complicated situation. Thankfully, 49ers fans have us here to break this down for them. So today we're going to get into our usual grading topics here, go through and give our grades for the performances on the offense, defense, special teams, and coaching. But first of all, I want to throw out a couple of stats before we get into it. So the 49ers against the Cardinals on Sunday, unfortunately walking away with a loss. But in total yardage, you actually saw the 49ers edge out the Arizona Cardinals 338 to 304. It broke down with the 49ers 186 passing yards on the day, Cardinals 210. Rushing yards, 49ers 152, vast majority of those going to our quarterback, Trey Lance, and the Cardinals 94. Penalties, 7 for 60, continue to be an issue. Turnovers, an even battle on Sunday, thankfully. And time of possession, again, edged out for the 49ers, 32 to 28. So again, another game where the 49ers win the total yardage game, win the time of possession, and end up losing the game. So let's jump right into the grades and talk about the most important position, which would be the quarterback position. I gave the quarterback position a solid C. Suneil, how did you have it ranked out?
Yeah, so I think that it depends on how you grade this. And the way that I want to grade it is not taking into any consideration that Trey Lance is a rookie. Because at this point, he's our starting quarterback, and he shouldn't get a grade on a curve because at the end of the day, we're looking for this team to get wins, and a loss by a rookie quarterback doesn't necessarily make it that much better, right? It's a loss. It takes us further away from our goal of making the playoffs. So you got to judge him based off of what he did to help this team win. So I'm also giving him a solid C, but I'd probably drop it actually to a C minus. And the reason for that is because I think that Trey did a lot of good things. But if you look at his completion percentage, well below where it needs to be. If you look at the amount of points that he was able to put on the board, way lower than it needs to be. And even though he is good at moving the chains, we obviously had the time of possession numbers that you put up, the yards that we put up, so on and so forth. It was still up to these receivers to make really, really difficult catches. And yeah, I mean, that also was that Trey had to make some difficult throws. But until he becomes a better passer of the ball, and until we're able to put more points on the board, you can't give the quarterback, that great of a grade, because at the end of the day, like you said, it's the most important position. And even though there were receivers that drop balls and things of that nature, quarterback still has to figure out a way to get points on the board. And that was our biggest Achilles heel. We didn't put enough points on the board. So I'm giving him a C minus, though I do think that I do see a silver lining in the fact that I do think that this offense is going to be better if Trey Lance continues to be the starter.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating to watch. Julio is coming in on you here, Suneil. Are you ready for the answer here? Suneil, you can grade him without rookie freebie, but wouldn't you also have to compare to 49ers best alternative, aka Jimmy G, if you're not going to give Trey the rookie card?
Sure. I mean, if you guys have been watching the show, and Rob could attest to this, how have my Jimmy G grades been going?
They've been pretty harsh, right? You haven't taken it easy on the guy.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that I have to grade him as a starting quarterback, not a rookie starting quarterback.
Yeah.
And I look at the position, how well they did to help this team win. And look, the offense has continuously been the reason why we've lost these games. And that hasn't been different if Jimmy G was there or if Trey was there.
Yeah, I was highly disappointed by the amount of support that as a rookie quarterback coming in, the 49ers were unable to provide to Trey Lance. It was mind-boggling to me, and we'll obviously touch on this when we get into the coaching grades, but I just can't believe the amount of pressure, the level of game planning that was dumped on Trey Lance's shoulders for this game. It was basically a Trey day, and that seems unfair to the rookie to put so much weight on him to go out there and be the entirety of this offense. And he didn't get the help from the players on the offense. You mentioned the drops from the wide receivers. That was absolutely not what a rookie needs as far as support goes from his supporting cast. Mm-hmm. I thought I saw when he scrambled on his own, you saw the potential. I mean, I went back through and rewatched the start of that game just before this broadcast, and it was hard to do because, you know, it's an emotional letdown to have lost this game the way in which we did. But what I will say is the 49ers were absolutely moving the ball. I mean, it was impressive, the things he was able to do. Now, there were a lot of hiccups, a lot of things going on that didn't assist him in getting the job done. A lot of situational football where clearly he wasn't prepared to execute. But as far as the ability to move the ball, the ability to push it down the field, the ability to create with his legs, in particular, when things break down in the pocket, I thought I saw a lot of things that I could get excited for with Trey Lance. Absolutely. And I agree that the vast majority of things that were cause for concern were not Trey's doing. Yeah,
I mean, the incompletion percentage is, because yes. I do think that there is some room for understanding how hard he throws the ball. And I think that seems to be a little bit of an issue. He does sail the ball high. Whether that be a velocity issue or a mechanics issue, I'm not sure. I'm not good enough at the X's and O's to be able to give that. But there clearly is something that when he misses, Rob, he misses high. So that's something that definitely needs to be fixed. And I mean, clearly his mobility is an asset. If this offensive line, and we're going to get into that soon, but this offensive line would have let a lot more sacks go if it wasn't for Trey being able to scramble, move out of the pocket, and not be sacked for loss, right? So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that Trey Lance should be the starter moving forward, but it's not like he deserves an A or a B with this game. Like, there's still a lot of room for improvement, and we are more excited about him than Jimmy, but that doesn't mean we got to go overblown and just be like, oh, because we think Jimmy would have probably been a D or an F in this game, that Trey should be a B or A, right? He still didn't play well enough for us to win this game.
No, he didn't. And to me, there were three areas where he struggled the most. The first being the situational football, things like the 4th and 1 at the goal line, 4th and goal at the 1. And a couple of plays like that where he didn't seem to be in the right. He didn't execute on those plays in the way that he needed to in order to get it done, basically. Though that was definitely an area of concern. The sailed passes was another area of concern. And then, and this may be tied to the sailed passes, you could almost sense that he was too excited coming into the game because he was running into his blockers on some of those quarterback draws that he came up the middle. There were several instances where he actually ran into the back of Tomlinson, McGlinchey, and even Trent Williams on one occasion, wherein I was like, Trey, you're a big guy. Stop hitting our linemen in the back of their knees, right? We can't have that. But it did scream to me, you know, the rookie scenario. But the game plan is, to me, much more at fault than the quarterback, and we'll get into that when we talk about the coaching. And so I agree with you that there was good, there was bad, balances out to that C for the quarterback. Couple of comments that are flowing in here. We got Joe Mama talking about first and foremost, even though Kyle called a ridiculous game on Sunday, I agree with your sentiment there. He can't go back to Jimmy this year. It's a funny thing you bring that up, Joe Mama, because we will be talking about that very subject after we get through our grading segment here. We will talk about who should and could be starting when we come back from the bye. All right, here we go. We got one from Amazon. Says, Rob, you're the man. Appreciate that. You the man. That's why they call us Niners faithful. Got to have faith. I'll just take that opportunity to say, yes, I am wearing my Niners gear, trying to amp myself up because I do try to stay within the positivity and not get beat down. And right now, Niner faithful is a time that you could feel beat down, that you could feel that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Suneil and I are here to give you the straight dope, to give you the real deal, but we're also going to leave you with a little bit of hope, or at least I will. Suneil might be too negative for that. I don't know. We'll find out. But I definitely will try to lay down some positivity for you, even if it's a little false hope. And Suneil will call that out if I do. So, so we'll let you know.
I think that faith is very, very important, but it shouldn't blind you to serious issues, right? You could have faith, but if there's actual things that need to be fixed, faith doesn't solve those things. We have to come up with solutions.
Yes. Waruna says it well here. We are here to support Trey Lance. Being faithful, being a good fan does mean being supportive of your team. But to your point, Suneil, it doesn't stop you and I from calling out major flaws within this team, from pointing out areas of concern, and from talking about those areas that the 49ers need to improve if they want to be a serious contender. All right, let's move on to our running backs grade that we have here. And I'm going to let you start off with this one, and I'll come in next.
Yeah, I got to give this an incomplete. And the reason why I give it an incomplete is they weren't used. It was like 10 rushes between the two of these guys, and not for lack of production. I think Mitchell looked just as great as he was, in the Detroit game when he came in and kind of, steadied the running back boat. Trey Sermon got one carry, and it went for like 6-7 yards. That should have been a tackle for loss, but he used his quickness to outrun, a guy to the edge and make it a productive play. But they got no opportunities to really have a big game. So to me, I can't give them a bad grade, even though the numbers would show like a non-productive game. But I give them an incomplete, Robin. We haven't done an incomplete on this show. I don't know if it's part of the rules, but I really don't blame the running backs at all for their lack of production. I blame the game plan and whoever's making those decisions. We all know who's making those decisions.
We all know who's making those decisions.
But yeah, they weren't used, so I have to give them an incomplete, Rob.
I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, Suneil and I do not compare these notes before we give our grades here. And the incomplete is something that had not been used to this point. And I am not lying nor changing anything. I am looking dead at my notes next to running backs. And what do I have there, Suneil? I have incomplete. Incomplete, followed by 9 carries for Mitchell. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. 9 carries. You scripted... What's not scripted? You called 12 runs for Trey Lance. 12. He carried the ball 16 times, 4 of which were his scrambles out of the pocket. Right. 12 times Kyle dialed up. Trey's keeping it. But only 9 for Mitchell? Like, you have got to be kidding me on that. So I'm with you 100%. This is an incomplete grade.
And Rob, this is coming off of a Trey Sermon game last week, where he averaged 4.7 yards per carry. So for him to only get 1 carry is almost as criminal as, if not more criminal, than Mitchell getting 9 coming off of an injury.
And this is a team, Suneil, that is giving up, in the Arizona Cardinals, is giving up an average of 5.4 yards per carry. So this is a team that is absolutely vulnerable to the run. And yes, the 49ers ran for 150 plus, but the vast majority of that coming from their rookie quarterback. Again, putting the weight on the rookie. I love the scrambles. I love when he escapes with his legs. That's the advantage of Trey Lance. That is the beauty of having a mobile quarterback.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you have to design 12 plays where you're running him into the heart of the defense. It was perplexing to me. The running backs felt like they were having success. I will call out, and this will come up again when we do the offensive line grades, but it really was a one-directional success day. It was only successful when running off of the left side for the 49ers. I mean, we got blown up on many of those attempts that went to the right. There were a couple that got blown up in the backfield that stalled drives. Certainly that right side of the line did no favors for the backs. But again, this isn't a scenario where you had 20 carries and they were unable to maintain a reasonable average. You just didn't feed them enough. They were getting the yards. They were getting the first downs, but they weren't fed enough. It just is mind-boggling to me that you could have so few carries for
Rob,
running backs.
It wasn't a situational thing either, because this game was never more than one score for majority of it till the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah, at most 10 points.
Yeah, so it wasn't a thing where, this game is slipping away, so we need to get more into the pass game. Trey was really successful with these quarterback draws and so on and so forth. They weren't very successful. Like, those were the least amount of yards we were getting, was when Trey was on these runs that were scripted for him or like called for him. We were getting more from the one play that Trey Sermon got and what Mitchell was being able to do. They would average more yards per carry than Trey did, minus obviously those scrambles where he was able to be extremely effective.
Right. You've got Bryant Kolp coming in here. We have no running game this year. I actually sort of disagree with that take, in that we've had a fairly successful running game this year, but frustratingly, maddeningly, the head coach doesn't seem to want to commit to it, doesn't want to seem to work it in consistently to the game plan in a normal way. It feels as if all the run plays that are being called are trying to out scheme the other team, as opposed to just taking the players that you have that can and will get the yardage needed and attacking the other team. It feels as if a bit more of a dance is occurring as opposed to physically dominating other teams, as it seems we should be able to within the run game.
I get a lot of pushback and criticism because I bring up 2019 a lot, but I don't think this team is the 2019 team, obviously, but there's certain aspects of that 2019 run that we had that still could be implemented today. And I don't know if you remember, Rob, but back in 2019, 2020, whenever George Kittle went up during the press conference, he always mentioned a number. There was a certain number of runs per game that Shanahan and that team used to preach. I think the number was 30. And they said, if we get to 30 runs, we know that we're going to dominate this game or we're going to win this game, right? And for some reason, even though I don't think we have bad running backs, I think our running backs are just as competent as the running backs we had in 2019 between Mitchell and Sermon, at least those two. We've completely gotten away of trying to run the ball 30 times per game. And that isn't just a baby Shanahan thing. That's Papa Shanahan's mentality too, is to run the ball. You're a run first team. That's what, you've always been one of the least amount attempts per game in the passing game. All of Shanahan's offenses, but when he was an offensive coordinator or a head coach, have always been in the bottom 5 of passes attempted per game. And for some reason, this year, he's just like, yeah, I'm not going to be that way anymore. And it's weird.
It is very strange. And certainly, I mean, it hurts that you lose Raheem Mostert at the beginning of the season. But to your point, this is still a deep running back room, and it's a bit inexplicable to me. Julio commented on the running back situation, saying Sermon underutilized for sure, but I think Kyle was trying to save Mitchell's health. That being said, he didn't care much for the health of his QB2, Trey. I mean, it's a dig at the coach, but it's a fair one. It's a fair criticism. I have heard rumors about that there was a pitch count for Mitchell, but that doesn't explain why not utilize Sermon, to Julio's point here, right? You just pointed out, Suneil, that we came off a week where Sermon was lights out the prior week, right? Running very well. Seemed as if the offense was clicking for him. Seemed as if the one cut go concept had really hit home. And then he doesn't get a carry until the fourth quarter of the game. It just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. All right, we got more comments rolling in here. Try to get to a couple of these before we roll into our receivers' grades. But here we go with one from Dean. Dean says, I think the frustration stems from the promise of being contenders from the front office. And it seems Kyle is half stepping and half giving off Harbaugh vibes. I think there's real issues with who number 3 was. Interesting. Back to the quarterback conundrum. What I think is absolutely fair is the reason that 49ers fans are as upset as they are is expectations. That is absolutely true, and I count myself amongst them because I came into this season with significant expectations and have been let down to this point.
I tweeted this earlier. If the same thing continues to happen to you 4 out of 5 years, that's not bad luck. That is a trend based off of the actions and the decisions that you make. It's not only about expectations, Rob. This is a team that hasn't performed. How are we that much better than the Miami Dolphins or, these other teams that are always capable of making the playoffs, but never do? How are we that much better than the Dallas Cowboys? We made it to one Super Bowl. We didn't win it, but the other years, we're not even sniffing the playoffs. It's not like we're even a game out. We're like in the top. We're in lottery pick, basically. Yeah. Top 14 picks. 4 out of 5 years. And then one year we made it to the Super Bowl and we continue to give that clout because of that 1 year. But 4 out of, maybe that's the anomaly. That is the anomaly. And the rest of the team is a team that doesn't make the playoffs. So I don't think it has anything to do with expectation. I think we've been hypnotized into thinking that we are a better team than what we actually are.
Yeah, I certainly believe that we all want this team to be better than it currently is, right? We all thought coming in that it was better than it currently is, but it truly is. For me, I had expectations around how this offense was going to perform and how this defense was going to perform. And to this point, the defense has overwhelmed me in positivity and the offense not so much. And part of that is what we're leading into right now with our grades is the receivers, the receiving core. So we're lumping our wide receivers and tight ends together here. This was a group that coming into the year, I was pretty high on. I believe that we could and would have 3,000-yard receivers. And I know now that that was really, really foolish because I believed foolishly that not only would our Deebo Samuel hero so far have the season that he's having, which thankfully he did, and thankfully drafted him in a lot of my fantasy football leagues. But I foolishly believed that Brandon Ayuk was going to have a 1,000-yard season and that George Kittle would have a 1,000-yard season. And don't get me wrong, it's not too late for those things to happen, but my God, would it be a miracle at this point. When you look at the way in which they have performed to date, it would be a real miracle to have that come through. So for this past game, how I thought they graded out was a C+. For me, it was average and then some. And the only plus there, again, to me is Deebo. And if we're talking about as a pass catcher, Juice, right, who also caught 3 balls that day. But the drops have to stop. You cannot have a rookie quarterback coming out for his first start and have 3 drops on the night. That's just unacceptable to me.
Yeah, I almost gave this another incomplete, Rob, but there were those drops. And the reason why I was going to give this an incomplete is because what was up with these personnel packages? Why is Travis Benjamin on the field and Brandon Ayuk being used either as a decoy or sitting on the bench, standing on the sideline? Like, I don't think this receiving core is having an opportunity to be the explosive receiving core that you mentioned that you were hoping for. Obviously, Kittle is injured, but Ayuk is getting absolutely not enough targets. And he caught 2 out of 3 balls. The 2 catches that he had were ridiculous. One was
Ridiculous.
an amazingly thrown ball by Trey Lance, perfect velocity, perfect positioning, put it and Brandon Ayuk just did what his job as far as catching a very difficult catch because of where the defender was at that moment. And then the second catch was one of the most ridiculous catches that I have seen. The way he bodied the person and caught it with one hand, that is elite ball skills from an elite receiver. The only catch he didn't make was an uncatchable ball where Trey Lance sailed the ball high on Brandon Ayuk. And then obviously Debo was making some great catches. But to me, the wide receivers are a product of the personnel that's being put out there. And then the lack of utilization. Like it's like if you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis for the Lakers and you're having Talon Horton Tucker take all the shots. It's like, yeah, the team is going to look like they're not scoring very much, but it's because the 2 superstars on the team are not getting the ball enough, right? They're not even the ones that are being utilized. And obviously Brandon Ayuk and Debo aren't LeBron and AD, but they can be. They're the best 2 receivers we have. And the fact that they're not getting 80% of the opportunities is the reason why this receiving core isn't doing as well as it should be doing. And that's in my book. So I give it a C. But yeah, it almost got an incomplete just because I really don't blame these receivers.
Cassidy doesn't either. Cassidy with the comment is in agreement here. Why not use Trent Sherfield and Brandon Ayuk more often? That's a damn good question, Cassidy. Suneil asked the same thing of our head coach. It is perplexing when you hear things, and we'll touch on this later because John Lynch was on KMBR, I believe, where he's talking about Brandon Ayuk and talking about earning his role there. And we'll get into that specific comment later in the show. But suffice it to say that from a fan perspective, when you watch the game and you watch Brandon Ayuk with those multiple spectacular catches and the way in which he operates in space, it begs the question of what more do you need to see? Like what are we talking about here? As a fan, I am consistently left wondering, why are we not getting this gentleman the ball? I can't believe the decision to bring in Travis Benjamin for significant snaps as opposed to, I mean, you're yes, okay, he is a veteran. I get that. He should be able to come in off the street and be fresh, but you're also expecting somebody who was on the practice squad, who got elevated, who's getting limited reps in practice, who hasn't seen game action to this point in the season, and now you're going to call him up as opposed to going with the stud who's already on the roster, already getting the practice reps, and already flashing that he can excel there. It really is perplexing there, and not the fault of the receiving core, right? That's not decided by them. They don't say, well, it's my turn to go on the field now, Mr. Shanahan, I'd like to get in now. No, they're told when to platoon in and out, and so I agree with you that that's not on them. I thought that they, did enough to be serviceable, but didn't help out the rookie and need to get a handle on those drops. I understand how difficult a wobbler could be to catch. You watch a tipped pass, and they are almost never caught by the receiver, even when the receiver is far enough away from the tip to retrain their eyes and refocus on the ball to catch it, because it's moving at this odd way. And I am certain that a wobbler from Lance, at the rate of speed he chucks that ball and the way in which it's moving, would be difficult. That said, if you are a professional wide receiver in the National Football League and that ball hits you in the hands, you got to catch it.
Right.
All right, moving on to the next group, the offensive line here. I'll start out on this one because I thought that they were about average, but a little below average. So I had to go with a C- on this one. I mean, Trent Williams continues to be Trent Williams. He is the anchor on the left side there. Yes, he was flagged for a holding penalty, but quite frankly, who wasn't in this game for the 49ers? And he's just a monster on that left side. He's holding it down, but the right side of this line is struggling. For me, the game flipped a little bit from last week where I thought that Alex Mack was atrocious and Brunskill was just bad. In this one, I thought Brunskill was absolutely terrible. He was a turnstile. It seemed as if J.J. Watt just abused him like a stepchild in this occurrence. It was ugly. It was something to behold. And to me, it's just an area of weakness that shut down running to the right for the entirety of the game.
Yeah, this offensive line doesn't get a passing grade from me. It's a D. And this game, if maybe Jimmy was back there, I think there would have been a lot more sacks. And it was just the elusiveness of a Trey Lance that caused this offensive line to not have the sack numbers. But if you look at the pressures, if you look at the amount of push that constantly the line of scrimmage was constantly getting pushed into the backfield, to me, this offensive line has been the most disappointing aspect of this team as far as personnel. I really thought that Alex Mack was going to come in and make a big difference with his leadership and just his overall play. I thought that he was going to get he still had a year or two of maybe not elite, but at least good to great football left in him. And other than Trent Williams, everybody in here is replaceable to me. There's not a player on this team that on that offensive line that I look to and say there's potential there. I think that all of these guys should get wiped clean, and we should bring in a brand new offensive line. However, that's not a realistic solution because it would just be just as bad, because finding offensive linemen is really, really tough. But this season, I think, was lost the minute they went after Alex Mack over Corey Linsley. If Corey Linsley was our center, I think this would be a much different situation. But this offensive line has been atrocious and has been saved by a couple of things. Jimmy G, for all of his flaws, has a very, very quick release, which saves the offensive line. And Trey Lance has ridiculous elusiveness. Keep using elusivity, trying to make it a word, but
Hey,
elusiveness.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it makes me sound like I went to college. But elusiveness, which I did, by the way, elusiveness, and I think both of those things are masking a pretty terrible offensive line.
Yeah, I will certainly concede to that point that Trey's feet, his escapability, absolutely negated a couple of would-be sacks, because there certainly were pressures. And you're right also about Jimmy G and the quick release, and that, again, making this offensive line look just a little bit better than it has, which it's looked pretty bad to this point. I think that Avtar, with his comment here, is seeing the same thing. Right side of the O-line is getting worse every week. I mean, you could argue potentially that the level of competition has gone up as well, but you wonder if that's actually the case with Seattle. Certainly this week against Arizona, the level of competition had something to do with it. That is a good defense, but I'm with him that the right side has been atrocious. And then Julio raises the question here, given Kyle's poor judgment of Sermon, which to this point seems to be true, that he is serviceable but not getting any carries, or didn't this week. Ayuk, who is in the doghouse. Trey, who he's trying to kill on a weekly basis going forward. And Lenore, who apparently we're going to start people off the street over, even though he's had some serviceable games till now. You have to wonder if Banks is better than we've been led to believe. It's a fair question. You know, we haven't even seen, we have no idea what he would be like against NFL competition in a real game.